auf einen Melange mit dem Process Wizard. Dear JM, welcome to my video podcast on a melange with the Process Wizard.
Cheers, my friend. Thank you for having me. I'll take the moment right now to take a sip of my coffee.
So, me too, me too.
Mm. It's the morning for me, so this is absolutely appropriate.
That's very important information for the viewers because you're my very first guest who is who is living on another continent. So for now, all my guests came from Europe, and you are the very first guest from Canada. Awesome,
Yeah.
really cool. So I think time difference is 6 hours, isn't it? Six or
Yeah,
seven hours.
I mean, it's 11 in the morning for me, so it's still like coffee o'clock. And also, no judgment if your coffee o'clock is 6 p.m. Everyone has entitled to their delicious little sip of Java.
Exactly, and as you know, for me as a VNS guy, coffee is one of the most important things. So
Mhm.
I don't care at which time I drink coffee, as long as it is a good coffee, actually.
In our preamble before this podcast, you mentioned, "Oh yeah, you can have whatever kind of coffee you want. I'm gonna have good coffee." And I thought, there's a little bit of judgment in there, just a little bit, but I love it. Here's the thing: if you have the best coffee in the world, you get a chance to say, "Listen, everyone, we have a way of doing it that everyone should try," and I appreciate that.
Awesome. So, I mean, usually at the beginning of a podcast, the guest is introduced, and so in my video podcast, it is a little bit different because we are virtually sitting on a coffee table, and usually you don't invite any strangers to your coffee table to discuss about the topics you want to discuss. That's why I want to know from you if you can remember when we met the first time.
Oof, when did we meet the first time? I would probably guess it was in the pre-call for What's Your Baseline's episode. And my good friend Roland Volt, the co-host of What's Your Baseline, would have introduced the two of us to each other through that Google Meet. But maybe am I misremembering?
No, it's totally correct, and it was quite funny for me because so I met Roland before, and because Roland is originally from Germany, so it was a little bit easier for me to get in contact with him because there is no language barrier. Although I come from Austria, but I understand German very well, and I was a little bit nervous before I met you because I didn't know you at all, besides from listening to the What's Your Baseline podcast. And
Oh,
it was such a very nice and funny surprise because you're such a funny guy. And I really think that's super important to stay funny in life, to stay funny also in business. That's why so I would not say I immediately fall in love with you, but
oh.
I immediately had the feeling that this guy is allowed to sit on my virtual coffee table.
Thank you. And that's, I feel the same way. It's one of those things you meet a guest or a potential guest on a Zoom call or a Google Meet, and you think, what would that be like to have a full hour-long conversation with them? You're trying to get a sense of the person behind the screen. And I love it when I walk away from these calls going, man, that's going to be a good episode. And that happened with you too, my friend. So I'm glad to join you today at your coffee table.
Thank you very much. Um, so before we start with our discussion, there's another thing we have to clarify. Obviously, I have to say obviously, because as you know, I'm the process wizard.
You are.
So I would like to have a similar acronym for you. So with whom is the process wizard sitting on a coffee today? Do you have
I
some
think
suggestions?
Yeah, so, I call myself a process evangelist because I believe in business process. I believe that it is important. I believe that it is challenging, but I believe that it is incredibly valuable. And oftentimes I struggle to sort of bring that perspective to people who are set in their ways. But like any evangelist, my job is to bring you into the flock. So you may be a process wizard casting spells. My hope is that I'm a process evangelist winning
Wow,
over hearts and
awesome.
minds.
Wow, I love it so much. It's awesome. Perfect. You are the process evangelist. So, my dear process evangelist,
My dear
welcome
process wizard.
to my video podcast.
Cheers.
And actually, it's quite funny that you have chosen this acronym because this leads me directly to the very first point I would like to talk with you about. What do you think is one of the main reasons, or are the biggest reasons, why so many people have a negative feeling or a negative view on process management, on business process management in general?
Oh, that's a great question. And it's something that I've struggled with for a long time. So let's start with um I'm a Canadian and an American. So I have dual citizenship. And when I look at some of the American perspectives that I've seen, particularly around protection of job security. So in Canada and America, there's a different level of job security offered. In certain states, it's been sort of at will, and there's not the same sort of severance and protections. And I feel like process has historically been viewed and at times been used as a mechanism of capturing knowledge while shedding people. So if you don't document your process and only you know it, they can't fire you. That's not the case, but that misconception I think has sustained. That's number 1. Number 2 is I think that the in an agile world where so many organizations are agile, it is a great methodology for helping to sort of keep course correcting as you evolve. Process is often misconstrued as a way of slowing you down. Think of it kind of like a resistance added on to your perfectly oiled machine. But we know that's not the case because good process enables agile transformation. But the perception, the misconception that process is going to slow you down means that there are managers and there are directors and there are C levels who are thinking, if this is a focus for my organization, I won't be able to move as quickly because process will hold me back. That's number 2. And number 3, and I think this is relatively an emerging part of the puzzle, but it's been there the whole time, which is that process enables automation, but with the advent of AI, process enables the training of AI models to replace knowledge work. Remember that industrialization was all about replacing a lot of manual labor with automation, and then digital transformation had replaced a lot of busy work with automation and RPA. And now that we have AI, there is a lot of concern around knowledge work being replaced with AI training on models and processes as kind of a driver. So there is a negative perception and a pushback against that for literal replacement through automation. So once again, job protection, the idea that it's going to slow you down, and the idea that you're going to make yourself redundant through automation tools. And those 3 things are compatible, but they need their own sort of talk tracks to be able to get through. Otherwise, we'll be in the same situation with a lot of organizations. They don't want to approach process, or they're not ready for process, or there are key stakeholders who are literally just grabbing onto ground and creating resistance.
That it's really awesome that you mentioned these 3 points, because for me it's 2 points, and they are, in my opinion, completely different 2 points. But what I really love about your points is, um, what combines those 3 points is the keyword or the buzzword eventually, change management, because at the end of the day it's about a very proper sustainable change management. It's about talking with the people, being
Yeah.
transparent, educating them, um, that stuff. And also funny for me because for me, I really love the in general design thinking and the
Yeah.
methods about design thinking, because um, they one of the key aspects of design thinking, in my opinion, is um, bringing the customer as well as your employee from the beginning
Mhm.
on in your boat, kind of, um, explaining everything to them, being transparent, be very open. And
Yeah.
if you do this in your process projects, for example, this entire topic of change management, it's so much easier to handle, and you do not have to have your own team or your own area of change manager and change management and initiatives. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that the part of design thinking, the sort of in part of that is empathy, right? That was a big, it's a big word that I've seen used. We actually in What's Your Baseline had a short about process empathy and the idea of empathy. I think it's there's a certain amount of methodological shift, which is like we have to see it from another's perspective in order to better understand it, so we can address it. And so what we produce is more consumable, more familiar. But also, I think, and this is maybe the Canadian in me, I think it's just about courtesy. Like you are designing a future state that someone else will have to execute, or you're understanding someone else's current state in reality. This isn't an academic exercise. These are human beings. And so, courtesy means trying your best to sit in their seat, to experience their life and understand what it means to them rather than just put a bunch of boxes on the page in order to complete a deliverable. So, empathy and courtesy are important parts that mean that, as you said, change management becomes a significantly less arduous task because things feel familiar, they look familiar, and they're kind of what you wanted to do anyways. We
Yeah,
talk about the word alignment a lot with executives. Like, oh, we want to make strategies that fit into their strategic pillars. We want to build a process hierarchy and framework and capabilities that we deliver that match up with their strategic needs. Think about that even as an executor. You want to build processes and automation and systems that feel intuitive to the end executor. And that takes thinking about it the way they think about it, sitting in their seat. That's part of the design thinking, and I completely that's what I latch on to.
and actually that leads directly to one of the points I think why process management is perceived relatively negative, is that you have, and that's actually kind of sad story, that you have so-called experts or process
Hmm.
manager who do not bring the people with them, who use methods which are just, I don't know, you can say, which are from the 80s, from the 70s, which are not
Yep.
usable anymore. And for example, you have said it before. What I love to do in my um, in the projects, in my process management projects, when it's about, okay, we have to improve a process, I love to sit together with the process owner or the process participants, and work together with them on the improvements, on the change,
Yes.
on the automation whatsoever,
Yes.
because th- there will be no resistance against it, because they have the feeling, they have developed it, they came up with the idea, they came up with the solution, and they will love it. They will say,
Mhm.
hey, we developed this process further, we will save time now, we will make more money, we will our output will have much more quality whatsoever. And I have seen process manager, process experts who really literally said, we take the as is process and we work ourselves on the solution, on the to be process, and everyone has to do it like we are saying it. And that's, in my opinion, such a
Mm.
big.
Uh-huh. It is. Well, here's the thing, and I want to change the language, particularly for consultants. I came from management consulting, and so well, actually I came from manufacturing engineering, but then sort of through management consulting. And what I'd love to do is change the language for that discipline. So I used to come in and I see my colleagues come in and say to our not let's not call them clients, let's call them partners. Say to our process partners, "Hi, I'm here, and I'm the process expert, and I'm here to help." And I could see backs just, "Boop. I don't like this. I don't like this at all. Well, who is this person here?" So I change my language. I say, "Hi, I'm here to help. You're the process expert. I'm here to support you with methodologies and practices that will make your expertise even more valuable." That
Exactly.
changes the onus. Absolutely. Now it's on them to provide information, and it changes the ownership and recognition. Now, what we produce at the end is truly theirs, not mine, theirs.
Totally. I'm 100% with you. The second point, where I think, so, or my second main reason why I think process management is seen not that positive is, I've experienced in due during my business experience, I've experienced a gap between what the management, the decision makers, want to have on the strategic level with business
Mhm.
process management. So, okay, we want to implement a process, a strategic business process management in our company. We want, for example, we would like to use Six Sigma or Kaizen, or we want to be just lean, whatsoever.
Yeah.
And what their expectation is that you just tell the working people, hey, we're using now Kaizen, and the numbers will become much better. And
Mhm.
it's it's just not working. So there's this gap between what the decision makers would like to have and what the executors, so the process participants, actually must do.
Mhm.
And I think that I really think we have to close this gap. We have to. I mean, it also comes a little bit then to change management, but we have to be transparent. We have to translate and manage expectations between those two stakeholders, because on the one point you have the decision makers. They are important because at the end of the day they decide what will happen, but you also have the process participants who are also at least that important, because they are the
Yeah.
persons who are carrying out the new process or the new methodology or whatsoever.
Yeah. Well, we say that on What's Your Baseline podcast, we love to say, doesn't matter what you put on the page. If the person behind the screen doesn't want to do it, they're not gonna. And I think recognizing the importance of each of the roles is really important in helping to weight the value of what they provide and also recognize their contributions and make them feel invested in this. I heard a really good talk, and I think it was from one of the big analyst firms, and they used a term that I've been repeating over and over again, and I'll tell you why it's relevant, called an unbroken chain of influence. So I worked with an organization last year, a couple years ago, that was really struggling to see its process practice find a home, so ownership, and find recognition within the organization, so respect and reliance and being used as a collaborative partner. And what we found is that there were a series of strategic goals that the organization had outlined, and then there was the process framework and hierarchy and their what the value they were trying to deliver. And there was this massive gap, and we found that it happened about at the SVP level. So C levels had something, they said they put it down to the EVPs or SVPs, and then there was this nothing, and then there was another position at the right just below the vice president or at the vice president level that was like deliver on process. And it was like, Why do we, though? What are we actually enabling? And so they had their own strategic pillars that did not quite align with the organization's strategic pillars. So they didn't end up getting, or they hadn't ended up getting any sort of real, tangible executive level support from the C level or from the SVPs because they weren't connected. And so what we said is we need to establish this unbroken chain of influence between individual processes and the end executors and what they do, the value chains, how they deliver to the organization, and the strategic alignment with our stated, our pillars, our goals. What do we promise to the market? And we literally drew this out. We had to like go in this huge, massive tree, and we built a model in Eris that was just this like top to bottom, literally from like our core value of becoming. There was a customer focused strategic goal they had that was they wanted to be the number one of this particular part of the customer segment. We said, great. So let's go down to the whole process hierarchy so we can explain to you why this is an important part of you delivering on that promise. And once we are able to assemble that and show it to the VPs and SVPs, they were like, "Oh, of course. This is what we need." And I can take part of this message and emerge this upwards and then bring back down for you influence and budget and visibility, everything you've been begging for years. And but what it took was this unbroken chain of influence. Otherwise, you're right, we don't have a reason. Without a reason, why do anything at all? And that's the scariest of all in these projects.
But that so the your example is really awesome actually because first of all, I mean I already have learned in the during my studies. Um, I don't even know which course it was exactly, but there's the strategic level, and usually you cannot come from the strategic level directly to the operational level. In
Yeah.
between, you have this. So they called it tactical level,
Yeah.
which can be seen as a kind of the translator between our strategy and the operations, and but also what you mentioned, which is totally important, vice versa. So also that we have
Mhm.
this bottom up communication, and it also reminds me, and I think that's why it, in my opinion, is working really cool on the OKR principle, which
Yeah.
was invented by Google, I guess. But it also shows kind of this, how have you called it, the unbreakable
The
chain,
unbroken chain of
unbroken
influence.
unbroken chain of influence, because you get the strategic goals from the C level, and every department kind of is breaking it down to their own goals, which is super helpful actually for everyone at the end of the day.
Yeah, you're delivering on goals, right? What is a business process, right? It's a sequence of activities to deliver a business outcome. Those business outcomes are your goals. Those goals align to strategic goals, ultimately align to how this unbroken chain that sees how you deliver value. And I'll say it back again because this is doubly important, not just to enable a process practice, but to inspire passion in your employee base. My wife, who is my better half by a lot, likes to say something that really stuck with me. She says, "If the outcomes of your work and your work itself don't appear to be connected." So a good example is the market reports out on a bunch of KPIs that are attached to your company, and your work doesn't appear to influence those KPIs. Her phrase to me was, "It says that your work and outcomes are unconnected and therefore it's essentially random. So why care at all? What you do has a random outcome that your company sees. You need to make this not random. It has to feel deliberate." And so when we think about employee engagement, employee enablement, employee retention, growth and development, these things only come when you feel like what you do matters. And you can only feel like that if you understand it. Visually is a great way to do that. So the visualization of a connected, and connected. That's why, particularly in the way that Eris lays out hierarchies of processes and architecture, helps to emerge that out. And so you can literally click your way through it. That's one way of representing it. I happen to like that. But most importantly, is the principle. You can find why you exist from your process to our strategy. And that's so powerful.
Yeah, and it's not only powerful; it's super important. So I've
Yes.
just read a book about about work, satisfied work in general,
Yeah.
and one of the main messages was, okay, if you want to be happy and satisfied in your work, you have to know why are you doing this work.
Yes.
You have to know why are you there, why are you standing up every morning and go to work, kind of. Totally.
Yeah.
And it also goes a little bit into the direction of, so I had to think about the lean management principle. So if your work has no influence on the important KPIs, then just don't do it, because why are you doing it? Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
like that's fat
that's a
we can
mess.
trim. Oh, it's true. And the 7 deadly sins of process are, it's the way it's always been done. Because it's the way it's always been done. Like, that's it's the way we've always done it. Like, that's the thing that I feel like once you start thinking about it in this framework, right? Is you start asking yourself the hard questions. And you ask them, maybe you don't ask yourself. Maybe somebody facilitates this for you. That's why once again I say you're the process expert and I'm just here to facilitate the conversation. When you start asking the hardest questions together, and the one of the cool tricks as a consultant is to say, oh, I'm going to play dumb. But the truth is you're not really playing dumb. And if you have a genuine curiosity for how people do their work, it is authentic. And in that moment, you can make a connection with your process expert and say, well, why do you do this? Well, we have to. Why do you have to? Well, because we were told we had to. Why did they tell you you had to? Oh, well, because there was this regulation. Well, why does this regulation matter? Well, because it was important. Was important? Well, I mean, it has been replaced. Okay, so then now we got the five
Yeah.
whys principle is a good way of digging into it. But with no self examination, process practices are doomed to accumulate process debt. And
Yeah.
we talk a lot about technical debt in organizations, but I speak a lot about process debt these days because I go into an organization and I say, how many process models do you have? And they say, well, we have like 5,000. I'm like, a lot of process models. Maybe it's a complicated organization. I say, how many? Fine. How many have been updated in the past 2 years? They say 500. I say, okay, great. Do you think 4,500 haven't changed? Well, I don't know. So why didn't you look into that? Well, because we simply assumed to be fine. Does anyone ever look at these? Are these even in use? Well, I don't know. Well, we're going to stand up a new environment and we're going to choose what to import and harmonize in areas. We know all of them. Well, why do you need all of them? Well, because we need to have all this process. We've accumulated it. It's like, well, is this is this gas in the tank, or is this a big heavy metal iron, big anvil in the back seat or in the trunk weighing your car down? And the truth is, for the most part, it's the second. It is just a lot of drag on your environment because these aren't processes you need. They were once relevant, but they're process debt that's built up over years where no one ever harmonizes. They just keep adding and adding. That kills me. And it also makes
Yeah,
it
but
very hard for companies
I,
to actually get their hands around process.
so yeah, sadly I know what you mean, because so either they have that many, let's say, old static processes, or they tell you we have no processes at all, and you think, okay, how are you doing your work when you have no process? Because then you're literally doing nothing. um, Besides that, now I've totally forgot. I hope the viewer have recognized this, because you also have, I guess, indirectly shown the one of the best consulting or facilitating methods. Just ask questions. So when you are facilitator or when you're a consultant, it is not your main task to be the preacher, to be the savior, and tell them about your experience, your life, whatsoever, about the best solution. But just ask questions, and everything will come from them, actually, because usually they have the knowledge. You just have to sometimes dig deep, and then everything will come out.
Well, it's a question of humanity, right? What do people want? They want to feel valuable. They want to
Exactly,
feel
totally.
listened to. They want to see that the person at the other on the other side of the table, at a coffee table, is with them on this journey. And if you come in a position of authority, exercising your authority over their reality, you've earned a detractor. But if you come in as somebody who's here to listen, here to be a collaborator, you've earned their trust. And that's so much more powerful and so much more sustainable. A culture of trust, an open organization. It's a really great book by Jim Whitehurst called The Open Organization. If you haven't checked it out, it's really good. Um, about visibility in companies, about this cultural shift that talks about sharing more of who you are and what you do and why you do it. This is something that grows. It's a new capability once you've established this culture, and I think this culture, a great catalyst for it is process. Let's use it.
Perfect. So, JM, I'm really sorry, but when I'm looking at my coffee, it's empty. But
Oh.
before we um, come to the end, I have to ask one question because it's so important for me. What do you think? And if you want, you also can explain afterwards why I asked this question
Sure.
explicitly. Why? What do you think have music and process management together? What
Ooh,
is the connection between music and process management?
that's a good question, and you're hitting it hard because I'm also a musician and I run a company and a band called Countermeasure. And what do these two have in common? So they always say math and music are connected, and the fact that it's sort of structural and you can see the beats of music. It's all even time signatures are very mathematical in how they work, and there's even music built on math. I think process and music, particularly in what I do. So I do a cappella, and the reliance on each other in a band is paramount. You have to have everyone working in concert, and we recognize that what we're creating is not an individual performance. Sure, it might be featured from time to time, but what we are creating is an overall experience as a group of people making something become. I think in process, that's a very similar principle. You have a variety of different actors, the human or system, that are individually delivering the best they can, but together represent the value of what you're creating. And that's similar to the way we do it in a band in a process, or a sort of cross-functional process. We're all trying to do our best to make something really amazing.
So I'm seeing it now. It's a and so this terminology is even used in business process management. So it's the perfect process choreography.
Yes, choreography, everything operating in concert with each
Oh,
other.
awesome. Perfect. So, um, my dear GM, one of my life mottos is that life is not only about taking, but at the end of the day, also about giving. And you have given me, so I have taken from you knowledge, time, your time, of course, wisdom, um, and I also want to give something back to you. And
Thank you.
that's why I have a present for you, and you even can choose which present it's going to be. So you have to choose one of my hands.
Well, you're shaking them up and down. You know what? I will choose your left hand.
So this one.
That's correct. The one that's hovering just underneath the delicious looking bottles of alcohol.
So it is a book. So you will get a book from me.
Thank you.
I guess you want to know which book.
I would. I mean, is it your book? Have you written a book yet?
So I have written a book actually,
Oh,
but
wonderful.
I will not give. So I will not
You're
give
not
you my book because
gonna, you're not gonna
it's not that super.
give.
Besides that, viewer, everyone who is interested, just buy it.
Yes, please,
Um,
please. No, no. Let's not downplay your book. You've written a book, so we got to move some paper here. If you haven't bought Christoph's book, it's time to get on Amazon.com and buy his book. It's on available on Amazon. Is that right?
yeah, yeah, on Amazon, and there's always standing only 3 on storage, so you have to hurry. No,
uh,
actually, it's related to the What's Your Baseline episode where was your guest. I would like to give you the subject oriented business process management book, which was
yes.
written by
All
Albert
right.
Fleischmann, because
Yeah.
then you have something to read and hopefully can even better understand my passion for subject oriented business process management.
Absolutely. I thank you so much. I appreciate it. And listen, it's going to go on my bookshelf right next to Radical Candor and
Wow.
Drive and the NPR's podcast startup guide. Because that's how that's how we started. What's your baseline? We just sort of figured it out by reading and listening and talking and doing.
Perfect. So then, JM, I wish you a wonderful day ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for having been my is it called having been my guest? Thank you
That
for
works.
being my my guest. Um, super, a very big pleasure for me. I'm super thankful, and I guess we stay in contact.
That we will, my friend. And thank you so much. And you put the quick pitch in there for your episode of What's Your Baseline, but I think it was really fun on subject oriented BPM. And if you haven't checked out what'syourbaseline.com/podcast, you'll see it there, and you can see more of Christoph on our show, where Roland and I get to talk about our perspective on things with fantastic folks like yourself.
Perfect. Thank you. See you around.
See you later, my friend.